What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Allen, and today, being that we're in May, it is officially Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to kind of emphasize on some mental health topics and really dive into that and dive into how we can be getting uncomfortable and helping our mental health. And so, in the spirit of Mental Health Month, I just wanted to kind of talk about, well, first of all, some of my experiences through therapy, and the biggest lesson that I learned through therapy and how it relates to both my life, your life, all of our lives. It's something we can apply universally. So that said, let's get diving in. I've mentioned it before, but for those of you who don't know, last year I did therapy for a while. Since moving in the early fall, kind of have been off of it, but it's something that I definitely want to get back in again. I personally think that every single person on this planet should be doing therapy, or at least should do it at some point in their lives, because we've all got stuff and, we can't deal with it on our own. So anyways, that said, that's just my little soapbox out of the way. But yeah, essentially, so I went to therapy for a while. It's like 5 or so months, around that, 4 or 5 months. And for a variety of different things, we won't get too into that, but one of the biggest things being anxiety, and some really big struggles I was having with really bad anxiety and anxiety attacks all the time, constantly. Anxiety was truly ruling my life. And it pushed me to the point where I was like, I got to do something about it. Like something has to break here. Something's got to change. And so, essentially, so I started seeing a therapist and on a weekly basis, and it was tough at first. I mean, it was really hard to break into. That was definitely one of the more uncomfortable things that I've done. Was just, literally, for those of you who haven't been a part of therapy, I mean, it is very much so like what you think, where you literally just sit down and you're just pouring your heart out to this stranger you just met, and honestly, it's really freeing. It feels really freeing. It feels really good. A lot of times you're sitting there telling them things that you haven't told anybody, and you're just getting it out there. You're airing it all out. And I don't know, like I said, like it honestly does. It feels good. It feels amazing to get that out there. But it's also very uncomfortable, and it's, just getting there is a tough thing. And, but once you do, man, it's so worth it. And there's so much good that comes from therapy. And, something that I really can't recommend enough. But, once you push through that discomfort and you get through it, it's a good thing. So anyways, I did that. And, through working with her for those few months, I learned a lot, actually. I gained, it's not a miracle fix. I didn't magically get better. All my problems didn't magically go away, though it did help some. Granted, it's definitely better to stay in therapy for probably longer than 4 or 5 months, but life happens. So, but point is, all that to say, I learned a lot. And the key topic of this podcast is essentially the biggest thing I learned. And so, I could get in all the other little things, but the biggest thing that you can apply to your life right now that I learned from therapy is how we deal with fear. And essentially, to take that a step further, is we have to run at fear. The only way to conquer fear, the only way to overcome fear, is to run at it. You have to run at it head on, and you have to face it. And it's like the saying, I guess the only way out is through. That's at its core, that is the only way that we can overcome fear. The only way we can beat fear is to run at it. And fear, anxiety, worry, whatever it is, the only way we can overcome it is to face it and run at it. So, for example, for how this was presented to me through therapy was I had a particular set of things that I was especially anxious about. This particular therapist specialized with OCD type patients and That's the category I seem to fall in. And so I had these things that I was like obsessing over, these anxieties and these fears that I was very highly obsessing over. And I I didn't know how to overcome it. It seemed irrational to me. It seemed like, well, maybe not irrational, but it was just like, why doesn't everyone else feel this way about these things? Why am I so afraid? And so I had this set of things that I was very anxious about and very afraid of. And so basically what we would do, one of the main ways that we would overcome it, actually, we'll get to that in a second, but we'll get to that in one moment. But yeah, I had these set of things that I was anxious about, and I presented that to her, and she was like, okay, how are you dealing with that now? And much of what I would do is I would bury it. I would sit there and ruminate on it in my mind, and I would think about like, well, what if this happens, and then this happens, then this happens, and then this happens, and just leading my mind down a rabbit hole of fear and anxiety and worry. And and then I would also just reaffirm myself and be like, no, that's not gonna happen to me. That fear isn't gonna come true for me. That's stupid. That's not, whatever. And she explained to me that it's obvious, from the outside, but she explained to me that I was making it worse on myself, that I was literally causing this anxiety to grow. I was feeding it by telling myself these things and by allowing these thoughts to run through my mind. I was literally feeding my anxiety. And I was like, wow, okay, how do I deal with it? So essentially for you, this is how you can apply this. The ways that we work to overcome it and how you can overcome fear in your life. One method we used, it's a type of therapy actually, but it's called exposure therapy. And granted, this is going to look different maybe in your life, but it's the same concept, same core concept, essentially. So basically what I would do is I would have this particular fear, and then we would talk about it. We would state what the fear was. I would say, I am afraid of X, or I'm afraid X is going to happen, or whatever the case may be. I would state the fear. I would get it out there. There's the fear. Sometimes she'd have me write it down. And then she would either show me pictures of this particular event happening. She would either make me explain it. She would make me literally like tell the story of this. It was usually like a tragedy, a bad thing happening. Or she would make me, all kinds of different stuff. She would either tell it to me, and as we're doing this, she would have me monitor my anxiety. And so I would look at my anxiety and just looking internally at myself, feeling my anxiety rise. And when it reached, I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, when it would get higher, closer to 10, I would have to say like, hey, look, my anxiety is getting high. She would then tell me, you need to lower your anxiety. And you can't lower your anxiety through the ways you've been doing it by telling yourself everything's fine, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. No. The way I had to sit there and lower my anxiety and lower my worry and fear, and the way I had to do that was literally through just being like, maybe that will happen to me, maybe it won't. I don't know. I'm gonna just, keep going through life, doing what I can, focus on what's in front of me. And it was really hard. And especially when I had to then like apply it to real life situations, it was even harder. But just to even sit there were times I couldn't even do it. Like, especially when we first started doing these activities, there were times like it took me so long to actually get myself back down out of this anxious state. And dude, it was crazy. It was hard. And but this was just a practice we would go through every week for 50 minutes. And I don't know, it was hard and it sucked in the time and it was very uncomfortable. What it taught me is that the only way that we can overcome our fear is to face it and to look at it and to be like, maybe that'll happen. The way you can apply it to yourself is, I don't know, maybe you want to start your own podcast. Maybe you want to start a business, whatever it is. Maybe you want to start something and you say, but what if I fail? But what if they laugh at me? But what if I'm not good enough? What if I don't have what it takes? Maybe they will laugh at you. Maybe you will press publish on your episode and nobody will listen. There is a small handful of people that listen to this podcast. If you're listening, I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. But that said, like, I press publish and not that many people listen. That might be your reality. That's fine. That's the beginning stages. That's how it works. But your options come down to you either do that or you let fear stop you from ever doing anything. And you can't live that way. You cannot live that way at all. You cannot let fear control you. You cannot let fear hold you back. And but yeah, just, I mean, as we would go through it, that's what we would do. And we would sit there and she would just have me bring myself down. So maybe when you're feeling anxious and when you're feeling worried about stuff that you're trying to do, stuff that you've got going on, whatever's happening in your life, how can you bring yourself down? There's a lot of ways. We talked about meditation on here before. We've talked about all kinds of different stuff, prayer. But yeah, taking that second to just breathe, take a deep breath, sit there with yourself. And I think there's a lot of freedom in saying, maybe I will, maybe I won't. X. Maybe X will happen, maybe X won't happen. And just be like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I can. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep trying my hardest. I'm just going to focus on what's in front of me right now, on what I can do. I'm going to control what is in my realm of control. And I'm going to stop trying to control all these other aspects of life. Because where does fear come from, right? At its core, where does fear stem from? Where does anxiety stem from? Where does worry stem from? It stems from control. It stems from trying to always be in control of every little aspect of our lives. And then we get worried, we get anxious because we can't realistically control every aspect of our lives. That's just not going to happen. It's not feasible. It's not possible. Sorry to break it to you, but if you want to control every little aspect of your life, it's probably not going to work. So don't bother. But yeah, just, and so when we can recognize where fear comes from, we can take fear and we can trace it all the way back to where it comes from and how it comes from this need for control. And it comes from our just desperately trying to grasp at control. When we can look at that and say, okay, I know where fear comes from, then when you find yourself feeling anxious, when you find yourself feeling worried and stressed out and all fearful, what you can do is you can say, what am I trying to control? What is it right now that I'm trying to control? To go back to our example you just used a minute ago, say you want to start a podcast. You're wanting to put yourself out there but you're afraid. Well, what are you trying to control? You're trying to control outcomes that you really don't have that much control over. You're trying to control how many people listen to you. You're trying to control people's reaction to you doing a certain thing. You have literally no control over that. You can do what you can. You can put the best content out there you possibly can. You can market your podcast as best as you possibly can. However, you can't control other people and their reactions. So, and that applies to whatever you're trying to do in life, anything in life. When you find yourself feeling worried, when you find yourself feeling anxious, and fear is starting to really creep into your mind, ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to control? And through reverse engineering that and looking at, okay, not just what am I afraid of, but what am I trying to control? You can let go of controlling that thing, which will inevitably help that fear to go down. Granted, that's not going to solve everything. You got to do more than just that. But that is a great place to start. So yeah, just tracing back, we can't let fear stop us. We can't let fear hold us back. And We can't let fear dictate where we're going to go and what we're going to do in life, because fear wants to stop us. Fear wants to keep us from living our best fulfilled lives, and we cannot let that happen. So we have to be able to face fear head on and run at it. And I don't know, this is a hard thing to do, right? It's not easy. It's not something maybe that comes natural to a lot of us. I think some people can be a lot more, maybe just more generally speaking in life at running at fear, especially like your adrenaline junkies, people that love, jumping out of airplanes, skydiving, and, doing whatever it is. And then you have a lot people who are a lot more reserved and a lot more maybe standing back to fear and like, you know what, I'll kind of just sit over here. It's not to say you have to be one or the other extreme there. I think it's really about finding a balance in the middle somewhere and finding where you're not letting fear hold you back into comfort, and you're allowing yourself to run at it and break through it and overcome it. And yeah, I think the way that we do that, the way that we run at fear, is just doing one thing daily that scares us. Ask yourself, like, what is one thing I can do? What is one thing that I can do today that maybe I'm a little nervous about? And it can be so small. Like, it does not have to be some crazy thing where you're like, well, I guess I got to go skydiving today. I guess I got to go, that's not the point. The point is, do one little thing that's going to push you out of your comfort zone, push you into the uncomfortable, and break you out of that fear a little bit. It can be, just going up and talking to someone. It can be going to the gym. The gym is a very intimidating thing for a lot of people. And I personally, that was one of the things we worked through in therapy, just to be totally honest and transparent with you, was I have social anxiety, and I get very anxious when I'm around a lot of people. And so a lot of times when I'm at the gym, I feel very anxious and overwhelmed. And there's been several times in the past where I felt so overwhelmed, I just left. Like, I just couldn't even be there anymore. And so if that's you, I get it. I hear you. I feel you. I mean, we talk about working out all the time on this podcast, but you got to understand that that's something that's uncomfortable for me too. And being at the gym, I get it. So maybe that's what it is for you. Whatever it is, just finding little ways to break out of your comfort zone, to get uncomfortable, and to run at fear. We cannot let fear hold us back. We cannot let fear have a hold on our life. And then maybe bigger picture things for fear is, maybe you have a dream that you want to chase, but you're afraid. You're afraid of what might happen, of failure, of whatever. How can you take one actionable step today to get closer towards that dream? All you have to do is one thing. You don't have to accomplish the dream today. You just have to take one step to get a little bit closer. And as you take one step, then tomorrow take another and another and another. And you just keep going. And the more you keep going, it's honestly, it's a lot like working out, because the more you keep doing it, the more reps you keep getting, fighting back at fear, the stronger you're going to get, and the more natural it's going to come to you to run at fear and to make the decision to choose the outcome that is running at fear. And your life you will be rewarded greatly. Your life will reflect it. And I don't know. I think the other question you need to ask yourself is, when you get to the end of your life, God willing, if you're old and gray and you lived a long life and you're on your deathbed and you're sitting there reflecting back on your life, are you going to be able to say, okay, I lived a good life, I lived a happy life, I pushed out of my comfort zone, I gave it all I got, I ran at fear, I lived to the fullest extent of myself, of my being? Or are you going to say, why didn't I take more risks? Why didn't I put myself out there more? Why didn't I do all those things I wanted to do? Why did I settle for average and mediocrity and less than I deserve? Why? Don't wait until then to make that decision. You can decide now. Literally right now. You can decide to which outcome you want for yourself. And I highly encourage you, please do not let fear rule your life. Please do not let fear hold you back. Please do not let fear stop you from stepping into the fullness of who you were made to be. You deserve so much better than that. And yeah, I don't know. I just want you to, I hope you leave this listening to this podcast encouraged and motivated to take a step. I hope when you, my wish for you, my hope for you is that when you're done listening to this, you go take an actionable step towards your goals, towards your dreams, and to run at fear. And if you need any help getting started, never hesitate to hit me up. I'm always happy to help wherever I can, even if it's just talking to you. So anyways, that's about it for this episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. I hope you gained something from this. I would love to hear your takeaways, your thoughts, feedback. So feel free to hit me up on Instagram at End of the Uncomfortable. DMs are always open for you to, so slide on in there. But so go run at fear, go break out of your comfort zone, go dive into the uncomfortable, get a little bit uncomfortable today, and then go encourage someone else to do the same. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching this over on YouTube, please leave us a subscribe and turn on that bell notification. And if you could also hit that like button, helps us out with the algorithm and rankings. And if you're listening on one of the major streaming services such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. That helps us out a ton as well. Plus, I just love hearing your feedback. So anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Go take an actionable step on your goals and dreams and run at fear today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep on diving. What's up, guys? Jake here again. Just wanted to thank you real quick for listening to this episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you would please go leave us a rating or review wherever you're listening to this. Really helps us out, really helps us tell more people about the uncomfortable and to help more people live fulfilled lives. So if you could go take 2 seconds to go do that, that would mean the world. Now go take one actionable step towards your dreams today and to apply what you heard here on this episode. You got this. I'm rooting for you as always. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Uncomfortable Podcast.
Take yourself out your comfort zone. If you want to be ordinary, you ain't even got to listen to me.
Comfort is overrated. We've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.